Hello. Welcome to a podcast on the law and its impact on computing technology and business. This is Brian Gaff. I'm a senior member of the IEEE and partner at the McDermott, Will & Emery law firm in Boston. The IEEE is presenting this podcast in conjunction with my column that appears each month in Computer Magazine, a publication of the IEEE's Computer Society. That column discusses legal issues relevant to people in the computer hardware, software, networking, and service businesses. In the last podcast, I discussed intellectual property or IP issues that startup companies should consider. In this podcast, I'll cover the concept of BYOD, which stands for Bring Your Own Device, and is the topic of my February 2015 column in Computer Magazine. Millions of people own smartphones, tablets, and other mobile devices that they use to keep in touch with their family and friends. What happens, however, when people use their own devices for work-related purposes? What if an employee is allowed to connect his personally owned device to an employer's network to do work? There are both risks and rewards to this that the employer and the employee must understand. BYOD is the phrase that's used to describe work environments where an employee takes his own device that he uses for personal matters and brings it to work and uses it for work-related matters as well. Many employers have permitted BYOD, believing that it's a benefit to both them and their employees. This might be true, but there are risks associated with BYOD, and employers should have a comprehensive policy in place before implementing BYOD. The potential rewards associated with BYOD include improved employee productivity and morale. Employees might prefer carrying only one mobile device rather than separate ones for personal and business purposes. Employer costs might be reduced as well to the extent that employees are responsible for some or all of the costs associated with their personally owned devices. However, before an employer tries to reap these rewards, it needs to consider the risks of implementing BYOD and put a policy in place that minimizes these risks. Let's take a look at some potential risks. One large category of risks are those related to employer security. These include unauthorized release of confidential or proprietary information, loss of competitive information such as sales and marketing leads, and the possibility of a data breach. These events might stem from the theft or loss of an employee's personal device. To combat these risks, an employer should have a BYOD policy that allows it to manage employees' personal mobile devices under certain conditions. For example, a BYOD policy might allow the employer to factory reset or wipe a device that's lost or stolen. That should erase the employer's information that was stored on the device and prevent the device from having further access to the employer's IT systems. However, keep in mind that the device is employee-owned and, as a consequence, might contain personal information that the employee doesn't want to lose. Wiping a device might be difficult for an employee to accept to the extent that his personal information would be permanently lost. Of course, if the device was lost or stolen, the employee might want his personal information deleted from it to protect himself from, for example, identity theft. But what happens when the device isn't lost or stolen and the employee is leaving the company to join another, possibly a competitor? Under these circumstances, does the employer want to wipe the device to protect its information and systems? Will the employee consent to the wiping and loss of his personal information from a device that he still possesses? These and other questions relate to issues of ownership, that is, who owns what on the employee's device. It's important to have a BYOD policy that answers these questions before ownership-related situations arise. Employee privacy is another big issue with BYOD. Employees' privacy rights are important and usually governed by myriad laws and regulations that vary among jurisdictions, that is, from state to state in the U.S. or between countries. Employers that can access employees' personal devices and the information stored on them need to understand how privacy-related laws affect them, and importantly, how to comply with those laws. This can be a large undertaking for employers who operate in different states and countries. It might mean, for example, that an employer needs to comply simultaneously with the laws of multiple jurisdictions. A BYOD policy is like a contract between the employer and employee. Therefore, it might be a good idea to draft a policy that relies on the principles of contract law as well as on the principles of labor law. Those of you familiar with my podcasting column might recall that I gave an overview of contract law in March 2014. The rights and obligations of the employer and employee should be defined clearly in the policy, just like it would be in any contract. Also, it's important that the BYOD policy be comprehensive and enforceable. But crafting one isn't easy, particularly if you're unfamiliar with all of the issues and applicable laws. Ensure that you have one in place if you're contemplating introducing BYOD, or if BYOD has already arrived for you. Ensure that you engage a lawyer to help you with a policy that's best for your situation and one that complies with all of the applicable laws and regulations for your jurisdiction or jurisdictions. I hope that you found this podcast helpful. Stay tuned for next month's column in Computer Magazine. Until next time, this is Brian Gaff. Feel free to contact me via email at bgaff@mwe.com. Thank you.